Virtual reality headsets have been in the hands of consumers for a while now. Of course, the Vive and the Oculus are both out, with the PlayStation VR coming out tomorrow at the time of recording. And while the technology is definitely impressive, and I think, as always, it has the potential to be very interesting and the potential to really change things up, there has been a theme of the games, at least so far, being sort of very tech-doemy, very based upon novelty, and not really creating experiences that are intrinsically relying upon VR. There's a lot of games where the VR isn't really adding much to the experience, and John Carmack actually addressed these particular concerns at Oculus Connect, and he has basically talked about the need for developers to push beyond the novelty factor that is at the moment dominating the software for VR platforms. And he said, quote, "We are coasting on novelty and the initial wonder of being something people have never seen before. But we need to start judging ourselves, not on a curve, but in an absolute sense. Can you do something in VR that has the same value or more value than what these other non-VR things have done?" Now, he didn't only talk in such broad terms. He discussed what he called, quote, "objective measurement of quality." He mentioned the need to improve UI, he questions the absence of voice control in VR, and also targeted loading times as one of the main concerns of virtual reality. Elsewhere in the industry, according to him, dev teams are quote-unquote fighting and struggling to reduce load times to under 30 seconds, but that standard is apparently just too much for virtual reality. And he said, quote, "That's acceptable if you're going to sit down and play for an hour, but in VR, initial start time really is poisonous. An analogy I like to say is, imagine if your phone took 30 seconds to unlock every time you wanted to use it. You'd use it a lot less. There are apps that I've wanted to play that I thought looked great, that I stopped playing because they had too long of a load time. I would say 20 seconds should be an absolute limit on load times, and even then I'm pushing people to get it much, much lower." However, you know, as much as this is a valid concern, and load times are definitely a issue, not only in virtual reality games, but in normal games as well. For example, Recall, as great as a game as it is, the load times on launch were really long, way too long. Of course, we've seen it with Bloodborne as well. Even a great game can be brought down in quality thanks to lengthy load times. And Carmack called the sort of issue of avoiding the allure of novelty as, quote, "the biggest thing I wanted to impress on people." And to be honest, I really agree with what Carmack has to say here. I'm passionate about virtual reality. I think, as I keep saying, that it has a lot of potential. However, I don't think that potential is actually being lived up to at the moment. You know, there are some great experiences out and coming out. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Resident Evil 7 does, for example, with virtual reality. Curious to see what that's like. That's going to be one of the first AAA experiences. Of course, we have Batman VR coming out as a launch game on the PlayStation VR, but I would still say that Resident Evil 7 is one of the first real AAA releases, not the first, just one of the first. And a lot of the other games, as great as they are, again, VR isn't really adding anything. The game could be perfectly playable outside of VR, and they are definitely in that novelty factor. Now, I'm not saying all VR games are terrible. No, that's just silly. There's some great games on there, games that use virtual reality really, really well, but there is a lot of games where it's just like, this game, but in VR, and I'm like, okay. So, I actually do agree with him, and if virtual reality is succeeding, and novelty games have their place, but they shouldn't be the dominant thing, which is the issue that we have at the moment. But VR is, of course, very, very, very young in comparison to not only the gaming industry, but of course other industries as well. So it's got a while to learn and grow and change, and I just hope that developers, publishers, and so on are listening to Carmack's advice, and of course similar sentiments are being echoed by other people within the industry. As always though guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything I've discussed here in this video. As always, your thoughts and opinions definitely appreciated, as well as your support, so do remember to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. It does help out a great deal, and I'll see you next time.